Okay. I'm very fortunate to have such good colleagues. When I'm not hosting this conference, I moonlight as a city councilor here in Quincy. So I'm very fortunate to have such a good friend in public service in Tom Koch and John O'Keefe through QUBIC Labs. Without further ado, our special guest today. She needs no introduction. She and her team hosted the QUBIC Labs team in May for our first cohort for our accelerator. So we're very honored to host her here today at Boston Blockchain Week. Please join me in welcoming Abigail P. Johnson.
Well, thanks, Ian. That was a very warm intro. I appreciate it very much.
Well, we are happy to welcome you to Quincy. It's been a while.
Yes, it has been a while, but it's really wonderful to be here in historic Quincy, and it's exciting to see all the changes that have taken place here.
There are lots of changes happening. I think the mayor touched on, the history of innovation through the founding of our country. And so now we're going to have a good conversation about...
Can't beat that.
You can't beat that. No, this is the cradle of history here. And today we're going to have a nice conversation about the future of finance and the global financial system. So thanks for being with us. This is such a treat to have you at Boston Blockchain Week. Fidelity Investments, global powerhouse, household name. You've been in this space, crypto, blockchain, digital assets, for longer than most. So we could call you a crypto OG, okay? But the first thing that I want to ask before we get into the institutional plays is, how did you first discover Bitcoin and blockchain?
So it's not an simple question, not a simple answer.
Sure.
There wasn't any, kind of epiphany moment for me. At Fidelity, we pride ourselves on being a crowd of curious people and people who don't shy away from new things. And, this has been a little bit of a cultural journey for me and the company over the course of my career. But if we're talking roughly, we all know when crypto really began, but when it started to kind of be something that people talked about, that it was a little bit, at least a little bit in the general media, even in a way that was A, less than accurate, B, not necessarily positive. I don't know, it was sometime kind of probably around, 2011, 12, because I remember it was 2013 where we had a management group where we actually responded with forming a group because there were just a bunch of people who were curious about it. It's like, hey, we're just talking, we're hearing about it, and technology is a big part of our business. So what's this new technology? And nobody, we were all kind of, as individuals, struggling to kind of understand it. And of course, there's no place to really go to find out. So we started having regular meetings to just try to self-educate about what this Bitcoin thing was and how was it possibly going to play a role in the future of our business. So that wasn't really a moment. It was a process. But I think the thing that I really distinctly remember was the more we talked about it, the more questions we had, the more we dug, and the more we kept learning, and more things made sense to us, and that was exciting.
Sure.
So there was some kind of moment a few years into the beginning of the history of Bitcoin where there was energy at the senior level at Fidelity around understanding this.
And that's a big deal for an institution of your size. And so, when you decided to make that commitment, what was it about the tech that you were so appealed by?
So I was initially very drawn to this the security system. That was the first thing, because as a CEO of a big financial company, a lot of the time people ask me, what keeps you up at night? And the CEO of every big financial institution has to say, if not the first thing, one of the first few things, a cyber attack and cyber security. So here was something that appeared and is, incredibly secure. And people were really challenging the notion that something so simple could be so secure, because in traditional financial companies, you've got mountains of complexity, and to keep your environment secure, that's just reality. It's lots of years of different kinds of technology that have been built on top of each other. So that's what generates that, and it takes a lot of energy. So I thought, well, maybe this will be helpful from that. That was the very simplest thing that grabbed me, but then pretty quickly the elegance of the reconciliation of the blockchain really hit home, because again, as a big financial institution, you're reconciling huge numbers of transactions every day, and you've got, again, years of legacy technology that you've built up to be able to do that quickly and reliably.
Sure. No, that's such an eloquent way to put it. And so, as it stands, and I think you had mentioned this before, that there's just super interconnectivity across the financial system. And so while we are excited about the advances that this space has made, we are also still very early. And so can you talk a little bit about some of the interconnectivity that exists in systems like yours that we would need to be thinking about?
Oh, yeah, so we're talking TradFi, DeFi,
Yes.
and okay, maybe I can back up just a speck, because from your question, to try to give a more complete answer. So when we first looked at this, we first really started thinking about sort of isolated, discrete use cases where the blockchain could replace. And I'm talking, this is more than 10 years ago. This was how we were thinking. How can the blockchain replace legacy technology? And that seemed really exciting. But anyway, we quickly realized we had to move on from there. And, well, not quickly, it actually took, it seems quick now. At the time, it took a while. And there was a revelation amongst this senior team of cohorts that thinking about building bridges between TradFi and DeFi was not only super important, but what was really exciting was that, because at this point we had at least a handful of years of work on crypto under our belts, that as a big traditional financial company, we actually were in the best position to run into that and try to build those bridges to connect the old world and the new world. But I have to tell you, I mean, that wasn't where, it was definitely not where I started. And but I think looking back on it, it was very helpful to us to have built that foundation of just looking at crypto and what was the potential of crypto and the blockchain, and how much of a complete advancement it could be for our traditional system.
You talk a lot about the use cases, and I think that there were a good number of them, dozens of them, in fact. And so, could you talk about a couple of them, what worked, what didn't?
Yeah, well, you're going to like this one. So those, we had in the very beginning, after that, our initial working group, I think we had 52 use cases. And we had 52 use cases where we thought crypto, the blockchain, could be used in our business to meaningfully step up our game. And we spread them around the company with different teams, and we had lots of people who raised their hand who wanted to work on this, because it was an opportunity to learn
Fresh,
something
exciting,
new.
yeah.
Anyway, that's another story. We can come back to that. Okay. And so we worked on them for kind of 12, 18 months. And, after about a year, we started kind of bringing the reports back to really try to say, okay, we've been working on evaluate each use case after that. And it was kind of disappointing. And there was only one use case that specifically happened and came through to fruition quite quickly.
And what was that?
Well, but you're going to like the second one better. The first one was to take donations for our charitable gift fund in Bitcoin. This was going back to the kind of the first big ramp up in when, I don't know, I think it hit $100 or something. And, a lot of people who were in at pennies on the dollar had made a lot of money. And,
Sure.
I think they were very grateful to have the opportunity to participate in philanthropy with the good fortune that they had. So that was actually a great story, and it actually helped us get kind of more connected with the community and lots of people in the community. But one of our use cases was muni bonds on the blockchain.
I do love that one.
But we couldn't back then. We just couldn't make it work. The opportunity seemed so huge because we have so many customers who want to buy muni bonds, and it's such a fragmented market. It's very inefficient compared to other things, and it was just a massive opportunity to do it better. And we got into the classic chicken and egg problems. Well, no municipalities are going to do it.
Well, look where we are.
I know.
And I've got just the team.
If we had only persevered
that's okay.
for another 10 years. But we did move on. We did prioritize other stuff that went okay, and we were never going to get all 52 use cases done.
Well,
anyway.
That's a good segue because government is slow. And you come from a very highly regulated business. And so I think a lot of this evolution of the space has been sort of waiting on more clarity around definitions of certain laws and regulations from the federal government level. And so, but I like your perspective on what regulation provides for the customer experience. As we all very well know, Fidelity is a customer-driven organization. And so I want to hear about those connections and how some of that regulation and compliance efforts might actually help proliferate the space.
Yeah, so I think a couple things. I mean, early days, having people who actually even know what compliance is was actually really beneficial. Yeah. And for having virtually everybody in the company knowing that compliance is reality if you want to have any longevity was very helpful. So that made a big difference. And I think when you think about financial businesses of all types in our country, some regulation is reality. And there was, if you go back to, I don't know, kind of the late 19th century, I mean, oh my God, the financial system really kind of gyrated and was pretty crazy, and I think not great for the general population. And then we had a lot of regulation that came in kind of in the late 19th century, the early 20th century, particularly the first half of the 20th century. There was a lot of foundational regulation that I think really helped facilitate customer confidence broadly across the country, and I think that was positive because people could put money places where they knew it would be safe. The second half of the 20th century, maybe more regulation without cleaning up some of the old stuff wasn't really so great. The whole digital age changed lots of things in traditional finance. Forget, getting to cryptocurrency. And so anyway, I think it's good regulation. It definitely helps customer confidence is the bottom line. And that, that is helpful. I think there are probably mixed feelings about that in the community, but I think now that the community has matured, people see that, yes, it is good to have rules of the road. We can have fair play. And customers, even those who know very little about this world, but perhaps want to learn, have the opportunity to learn and experiment without having to fear for unreasonable things happening.
We've had a few conversations this week about consumer protection and privacy and security and safety, and I think that is often overlooked in many of these corners because of the exuberance of the space.
Yeah.
But very important conversation, especially from the government level, in providing those consumer protections for consumers. But you've talked a lot about community. And you've got a lot of communities within Fidelity that are working on various initiatives. So, coming from the internal research and implementation and the trial and success or error,
Yeah.
What did that lead to? Because you've got certain divisions or new businesses that were formed out of those efforts.
Yeah. So in the early, again, I'm trying to put everything in perspective. For a long time we had all of the things, the actual work that we were doing outside of studying use cases, really in our R&D group. And, that was a natural because we have a whole group that just looks at cutting edge technology. That was a natural place. People were actually surprised at the number of people that we had that were dedicated to this. But it became clear to me that we needed to develop this. And so as we started to think about analogs to the traditional system, I started to use that as a basis for how to do our organizational structure around this. So coming out of the securities business myself, the obvious analogy was to think about a brokerage-oriented business and investment-oriented business. So I'm kind of skipping an important step here that I want to pause and fill in.
Sure.
When we got over the 52 use cases, we realized we had to prioritize because doing anything was a lot harder than we thought. And so we realized we've got to pick a small number of things and just put our efforts on that and really focus. And one of my colleagues said, we really have to do custody. We do custody of securities. We know how to do it. We should design custody for Bitcoin because lots of people, while they might like to self-custody for lots of stuff, there's certain situations, reality sets in where you don't necessarily want to self-custody. So we are in the best position of anyone to be an institutional custodian. And that's what we ran really hard on that. We launched that in 2016. And that was the beginning of our Fidelity Digital Assets business. So that became the foundation of what I think of as the analog to the brokerage business for digital assets. Now, keep in mind, the regulators have been very fixated, although I think this might change, in keeping securities and digital assets separate. You can't have them touch each other in your operating environment. Anyway, but then the other side of things, we have people who want to give us their money and say, would like you to manage a portfolio with some of the major currencies. Lending, obviously, is a huge thing in this space, but the actual way that you do lending is completely different, but the value that you're trying to deliver to the customer is analogous. So we set up a group in our investment management organization that was going to focus on product development. And so we have those two different major groups that operate alongside our core business. In addition, we have the original R&D group known as FCAT. And then we also have some crypto businesses in our internal incubator, which has some. So we have all those different areas. So it's kind of spread. So there's room for different agendas, different points of view. And I think that's been helpful to us to developing our community and our internal ecosystem. It's not like we have one, blockchain division.
Sure. Can we talk a little bit about product development? You have a number of products that are out. I know that you're offering them, but not currently necessarily selling. But I want to hear about that strategy. And how successful those products have been.
Well, the core thing that you, or at least touching on, is we knew that the regulatory approval to do lots of different things was going to be uncertain, and what it was. So our philosophy was to technically work to develop lots of different stuff. So when the regulators decided that they were warm to something, we could be ready to go. So having that product pipeline, I guess would be the way to describe it, I think has helped us. Having that custody basis was very helpful when it came to launching our ETP. So, we were all shocked how long it took for that to be able to develop, and it got hung up on a technical point that was a big point of philosophical debate at the SEC. But
how long was that?
That was years.
Yeah.
And because when there was a whole lawsuit,
Okay.
and then the lawsuit, and then there's still foot dragging even after the lawsuit was run. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
This is just crazy. But anyway, so finally, we get a bunch of us launch ETF ETPs, and so that was a big. Well, Our first big product launch was the digital assets custody business in 2016. So that, I think that was putting us on the map. And then the ETP was really the next really big thing. But of course, that came out of the investment management division. Technically, we are very capable of offering income and yield kinds of instruments to people, but we aren't bringing those to market because we haven't been able to navigate all the approvals. So we've got a number. There are other coins out there that we know are of big interest to people that would like to launch too, but there's a lot of steps to go through, and so it's going to be a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey, so that will probably hinder adoption. There was, some numbers out there, at least in the last go-around of the federal election cycle, 50 million holders of crypto in the country, and that was meant to affect voting. But you've got well over 50 million clients and customers of your own, so you're well in a position to affect adoption rates, but I suppose what you were just speaking to, the hurdles that you need to go through would hinder that.
Yeah, so our perspective is, so as one of our core philosophies is we don't give people advice unless they ask us to be their advisor. So, and when we're perfectly happy with either one. As a business, we do equally well either way. So, people, we have taken the position that we are not advising people on Bitcoin or any cryptocurrency to date. And, but we do offer a great, easy, relatively easy opportunity to own it if you do. So we've found that a lot of our customers call, take an interest, they have questions. We publish quite a bit of research through our brokerage business on the opportunities, how things work. That's for people to digest at their own pace. So I think that will that gives people the opportunity, and I think that's kind of our core audience, is people who want to be involved but make decisions at their own pace. And we often find people saying things like, well, I want to own a little Bitcoin, and I feel better doing it at Fidelity because I know you, and I'm accustomed to interacting with you, and I have a relationship, and it's easier to do it in a consolidated way.
So it's back to that trust. There's a certain trust
we work hard. I don't actually use that language. We work hard at building our customers' confidence.
Great.
And that, we feel like that is actionable, and if we keep doing that more often than not, that means that people will keep coming back.
Right.
So that's what we aim to do.
So I think that, there's still a lot of awareness and education in the space that, regular people, I don't think, understand what's going on here.
Yeah, and the one thing I worry about, and this is an extension of what I worry about in our traditional financial system, is people keep coming up with new ideas, which is great, but there's so, our traditional financial system is so complicated.
Right.
It's insanely complicated. So sometimes when people say, what is the core of what you do? We really try to make the complicated, we can't make it simple, but we can make it manageable. And I think in the digital asset space, there is a lot of complexity. And so I think the ecosystem of digital assets to keep their eye on how do we keep this manageable for people who are not professionals in this business, so they can make sensible, risk-based decisions that are right for them, but without having to spend their entire life learning about it.
Well, it's sensible, pragmatic, it's realism, and I think that that's a very important concept to insert in this conversation. I think that a lot of this space thrives on this quote-unquote hopium concept, which is people are watching numbers go up with the hopes of becoming wealthy through sort of speculative crypto play. But in any event...
We do remind people it's a volatile asset.
Again, very eloquently put, yeah. So tell us about the current state of play. Where are we today, and where might we be going, I guess, in the near term?
Oh, near term. Guessing.
I don't want to give you too far.
I would say all along the way, I've been surprised at this, and that's been the exciting part. But some of the things that I've mentioned, realizing that connecting the new and old worlds was more important than we realized. Now, regulation is really driving what is coming on the market versus what's not. And we've got a fantastic team based down in DC that keeps very close ear on things, what's happening. We do lobby. We've lobbied, I think, on all of the major bills, and I think had a real influence, maybe not the most influence of anyone, for sure, but we've worked hard to develop relationships with the lawmakers in DC, who I have found increasingly receptive to conversations. Even those that are skeptical, they're at the point now where they realize this isn't going away.
Right.
And they really do need to engage. And if they're skeptical, I think that's okay, because I take that as channeling the thinking of their constituents. So it's worth considering, what is making people skeptical.
So how much, I guess, of the way are we there? How early is this? If you would put
I think it's still way early.
Wicked early.
Oh, I think
yeah.
of course. I mean, think about the world of technology in general and how much it changes. Our industry in particular, I think because we're so focused on reliability and security, we have a tendency to cling to things that work, what we know is reliable and resilient, and that includes technology. So that's a little bit at odds with this. Because in our business, you can't afford to mess up.
Sure.
You can't afford to not have everything go exactly as your customers expect.
So this is Boston Blockchain Week. We are doing our best to elevate this space, as are you in your way from Fidelity. You've called Fidelity a talent destination.
Yes, I hope.
Yeah, I mean,
that's our aspiration.
Well, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so lots of things. So we love everybody who is passionate about this space, whether you went to school for engineering or computer science, or if, like me, you were a liberal arts person.
I suffered from that too.
They're all enthusiasm and curiosity and a commitment to understand our customers and what they're looking for and how we can help them get what they want is what's key. And we're finding that at lots of schools, and there's lots of opportunities, even if you're just a little bit curious about this and are thinking, well, I'm not sure it's exactly what I want to do now, but I do believe maybe that's where the world is going, so I want to be in this space. There's a lot of opportunity to come to Fidelity and not necessarily be full-time in this space in one of those jobs that I mentioned, but be on the periphery of the space, never mind all of the support functions that need to go into supporting this space the same way they would with any other business. And just informally, we founded something many years ago, me and a couple of other people, the Bits and Blocks Club.
Oh, sure.
And so the Bits and Blocks Club sponsors lots of outside speakers who come in. We sponsor activities, events, networking opportunities. And anybody in the company we have a few of these clubs, but this was actually the original one. And the idea was to give people the opportunity to learn about a new space, even if it had nothing to do with their day job. So you can come and participate in something informal like that, work in a staff function that supports this space, work in a traditional role that is working on some of the connection activity with the new world and ease into it that way. So I think that's one of the things that we offer, that you're not necessarily only about digital assets in a narrow way. If you come join us, it's part of a bigger system.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, what a great opportunity. We've had many students here this week, and it sounds like a great opportunity to work at a global financial institution where there's innovation actually taking place. So we've got a couple minutes left, and before this talk, we did crowdsource some questions. So if I might ask you a couple of them. I think we talked a little bit about this, but one came in was, what role do you think large institutions like Fidelity should play in shaping regulation in the U.S.?
It's a little bit of a loaded question.
Okay.
Because large institutions have a way of wanting to double down on perpetuating at least some of the status quo.
Their core.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of goes with the territory.
That's fine.
And so I think I think some of the alliances in the business have, I hope, helped some of the smaller companies to have a voice. But there's also a lot of the companies who used to be small digital assets, crypto companies that are now actually pretty big.
Growing to institutional level.
Yeah, that are, so I hope legislation will take input from all, because we've got to continue to have competition, and that's what will move things along, I think, faster.
Absolutely, and we've already seen sort of what we've lost with government ignoring the space for a long time.
Yeah, it was unfortunate.
If you could change, another regulatory question, if you could change one thing about the current regulatory environment around blockchain, what would it be? We can pass. How do you see?
That is way too hard of a question.
That's fine. How do you see? We'll talk a little bit. This theme of the conference is where blockchain meets AI. We don't have to go too deep, but how do you see blockchain and AI intersecting the future of financial services? I know that you use a considerable amount already in your organization.
Yeah. So my knee-jerk reaction is, oh, whoa, these are two really different things. But one of the things that we've learned about AI is its effectiveness in a more digital application is way more successful and easier than in the old analog world. Mm-hmm. So I think it follows from that AI will thrive in the digital native world.
Right.
But as for putting them together, at least we still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, noted. Looking back, what moment convinced you that blockchain and digital assets were too important to ignore?
That's hard to say, because I always thought digital assets were really, really interesting from the beginning. I mean, that was that beginning. This is interesting. The more you learn, the more you want to learn, and the more questions you have, you answer them, and they lead to more questions. So it's always been too interesting to ignore. So that's not exactly an answer to your question, but I think I assume this goes for everybody in the room. You just found this so interesting. How could you not come to Boston Blockchain Week? Because it's such an interesting topic, and you want to work on it and bring it into your life.
Thank you for that promotional. That was awesome. Do you have any final thoughts for us? We've got many different people from institutions, startups, students here, whether it's about continuing to work collaboratively with organizations like yours. What can we do to continue to advance Boston as a hub for blockchain, crypto, and digital assets?
I would love to see Boston as a hub for all of this activity. I think that one of the things that helped us really thrive in our core business was that we were here in Boston, and there were lots of other companies that were very similar to ours. And what we found is, sometimes people say, well, someone can quit and walk down the street and get the same job. Yeah, well, that's true, but I think that is a negative or a risk, but the positive of being a talent destination for an area that is exciting and growing makes it all worth it. So I would really like to see more companies here and building their bases here and not moving elsewhere. That will help us and be great for the community too.
Well, you've done great work so far, and we will support you in any way that we can to continue that mission.
Oh, well, thank you.
It is such a treat to have you here. Thank you for giving us your time and sharing your mind with us.
Yeah.
Please give a round of applause for Abigail Johnson.
Thank you.